What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Mini TV Reviews. I am your host, Mo, and tonight, y'all, we're in the new house. Okay, so if you hear an echo, we are still unboxing stuff, so I apologize for the echo, but I have got to get back on the ball, y'all, and tonight we're going to be starting off with Smoke. That's right, y'all. This is season 1, episode 6, titled Manhood. I hope you guys have had a wonderful start to y'all's week. We're halfway through this thing, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the synopsis real quick, and then we're going to get right into the episode. So the synopsis for this one is Esposito and Calderone urge Harvey to take action. A fully rogue Freddy reaches out to an ally. This episode was insane, y'all. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So I took notes for maybe like the first 15 minutes of the episode. So everything after that is completely off the dome, y'all. So if I forget some small things, charge it to my head and not my heart. Okay. All right. So, we start this episode off with Ashley visiting Dave at the hospital. Now, y'all remember in the last episode, he had that really bad car accident where he was T-boned. We didn't know if he was going to make it, but of course he would, right? Because it's a show. So he makes it, and she checks on him, and she ends up telling him that he's got a concussion and like a minor sprain or something like that. So he made out pretty good. Now, as far as the other driver goes, I'm not sure. I think the other driver was severely injured, if not dead. Okay. So he got out of that pretty good. And we find out later on that the driver was driving drunk. So that's crazy, right? Because it's usually the opposite way around, where the drunk driver ends up being okay. Meanwhile, the innocent driver is completely ruined. So anyway, she checks on him, and she tells him about that, and he's like, okay, you saying it like it could have been worse. Why aren't you happy? I would think that you would be okay. You'd be more happy now that you know that I'm fine. But you're not. Come here. And so she was like, you know what? I ain't gonna even lie to you. Okay? When I got that phone call that you were in an accident, I seriously thought that they were gonna tell me that you were dead. I was waiting on that. I was hoping that that would happen. She didn't say that for real, y'all, but that's what she implied. She was hoping that that man was going to be dead in the car accident. And so now that he's not, she's reflecting, and she was like, a lot of people can't see themselves within their marriage when it's bad, but I know I'm in a bad marriage. And I'm willing to do something about it. Sorry, y'all. They're also cutting the grass. So if you hear that in the background, my bad. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. So she was like, you know what? I'm in a bad marriage, and I don't want to be here. Okay? I thought that the second go around would be a lot better between us, but no. And so he was like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault, Ash. And she was like, yeah, no, it's not my fault. It's your fault. You failed. You failed us. And so then he really gets upset, right? Because she done bruised his ego. And so he was like, get the F out of here. So she ends up leaving. She was waiting on the other shoe to drop, and there it is. Okay, waiting on him to show his true colors, right? So he ends up getting up. And y'all, this is when I feel like he might have some mental stuff happening too behind the scenes. He's definitely a narcissist, but I feel like he's floating back and forth between like what his character would do in his book, really trying to hype himself up, versus what he would do in reality. Because when he got up, y'all, and he was looking at himself in the mirror, we get two separate scenes where the first scene comes in and it's like what he would do in the book or what would happen in the book. And the nurse is like, oh, they wanted to keep you for a couple of extra days or whatever. And he was like, ma'am, I can't wait. I've got a murderer to catch. And so then the second scene happens, and she comes in and she was like, oh, you're discharged. You're ready to go. And he was like, really? Like, he was kind of shocked about it. She was like, yeah, we need the bed. Oh, that concussion, don't worry about it. You'll be all right. They ain't gonna even put that man in an observation pool or nothing like that. So they ended up discharging him that day. He's gone. So then we go over to the office, and Detective Calderone, Michelle, she ends up getting word about Dave's accident from Harvey, right? And so Harvey was like, damn, I thought that they would have called you. And she ain't get no phone call. And he ends up mentioning that the house that went up in flames the other night, yeah, it was a couple inside and they died. Now the MO is similar to their milk jug arsonist, but it's way out, like way out in the bougie side of town. Okay, so whoever did this, they end up using 6 jugs instead of 1. So she's thinking that it's not their person. Okay, close but no cigars. And I was like, if only y'all knew. So they think it's a copycat based off of that information, right? So they're eyeing the complainant. So they're the woman that died, the woman in the couple that died, she's a doctor. And so before she passed away, she was embroiled in this like crazy lawsuit that was against her. And so they're thinking that the complainant who filed the lawsuit against her is responsible for her death. And so I'm like, why would they, if you really sit down and think about it, why would they go ahead and try to kill her versus waiting to see what the results are from the lawsuit? You see what I'm saying? Get your money. And then if things don't go your way, then that makes some people very unhappy. So then that might be the motive after that. But, I mean, if it was a very contentious lawsuit, who knows? They probably would have won a whole bunch of money. So why kill her? So anyway, we get that information, but at the scene, because Dave, when he got discharged from the hospital, he ended up actually going to the crime scene. Dave gets some valuable information, although he may not know it at the time, about the husband being the corporate head of HR at Coops, not Churches. And he was like, damn, they wings is good. Okay, that ain't going to affect the local restaurants. That ain't going to affect business and how the flavor tastes. Speaking of Coops, the new manager is looking for Freddy. Okay, Freddy didn't show up to work today. He's a no-call, no-show. Man, Freddy been slanging that chicken grease for 11 years, y'all, and ain't missed not a one day. He ain't never called out. He ain't had no sick days, no family emergencies, no nothing. That's wild. So when Lee called him to see where he at, because the manager was like, hey, can you call him? And Lee was like, why don't you call him? And he was like, I did, but he not answering the phone for me. So when Lee called him, he answered the phone for Lee. And he was like, man, I ain't coming back to that place. Okay, I don't like it there no more. So instead, he ends up asking Lee to meet him at the park, right? And so apparently it's an amusement park and it's closed up for the season. So at that particular point in time, I feel like, because even though Lee is given hard life, you know, he been in the hood a few times before, whether it's for nefarious reasons or just to hang out, I feel like his spidey senses should have been tingling and he should have called the law. Okay? But the thought of free beers for Lee, free tall ones, outweighs that logic. And so he was like, yeah, man, I'll meet you there. Okay? But before you come, you need to stop by the store and get a 6-pack of tall ones for me. All right? And then after I get done doing what I need to do for my mama, I'll come meet up with you and we'll shoot the shit. So he was like, all right. Now, the entire time that they was talking, y'all, in Freddy's background, these fire embers was just falling all around him like snowflakes. Y'all already know something to happen. Now, back at the office, Michelle overhears a very irate Ezra. Now, Ezra done popped up at, he done popped up to the precinct or the fire station, whatever it is, right? And so she overhear him snapping off on Harvey because he been trying to tell Harvey for years that Dave is the DNC arsonist, right? And Dave just ain't hearing it. Dave don't want to believe that his best buddy at the job is the worst possible human being that could exist right now in his world, right? So Ezra was like, you know what? I'm trying to tell you what's been clearly in front of your face for years, and you continue to ignore it. Meanwhile, people are dying. Millions are being lost due to infrastructure damage. And he ends up laying out all the evidence and even points out that the route that Dave takes home is along the path that the fires were set. And not only that, he also mentions that out of the 3 people that have been at those conferences that he does seminars at, he's the only one that's a fire expert. And while he's at those conferences, little fires are being set in the area as well. So make it make sense, Harvey. Why you still not willing to play ball with us? So he was like, you know what? What you on? What did you take today? And so he was like, I mean, I might have popped a couple of ketamines. I might have did that. I might have took some benzos. That doesn't matter. So this is when Michelle pops in and she was like, look, he is the DNC arsonist. And so she ends up telling him about the evidence that she found. And he was like, you know, how long you been knowing? And she was like, I done knew for the past 48 hours. And so he was like, well, And so she busts his balls a little bit. You know, what side of history do you want to be on when this all go down? Because it's going to happen. And so he finally gives in and was like, all right, cool. I know a place where we can go where y'all can tell me everything that you need to know. And we're going to call the appropriate people and get them in here to listen to said evidence. So that's exactly what they do. Now, we're going to go through the three individual storylines, okay? And we'll just lead out to the end result at the end because 2 of them is going to meet up. So they end up getting the appropriate people out there. And it's the ATF, I believe. Now, I don't know the names of the 2 people that they brought out there, but it's a woman and a man. All right. So they start throwing out all the evidence. And, yeah, Ezra is trying to literally hit on this lady in front of everybody else, right? And so he ends up trying to call some of his homeboys because they had looked at some footage and they found out that Dave was in, he ended up passing 5 of the fires that had actively been set along that road. Like he just happened to be caught on camera after those fires had been set. And so Ezra was like, you know, that's not a coincidence. And that was like, yeah, but that's the only way to his house. So they end up revealing that Michelle had found that incendiary, right? So even if it's not enough to be admissible in court, at least it'll point them in the right direction to start trying to gain some evidence, right? Or at least try to start working on a case against him. And so that was like, all right, we'll go get it tested. So while they doing that, Ezra is trying to call up his homeboys, his old homeboys from the fire department. Well, they don't F with him like that. So they end up getting off the phone with him. They hang up on him, actually. And so Harvey ends up calling and he gets confirmation that he has them send over all of the information regarding like those fires, all the files from the recent fires. And of course, Dave had worked most of those cases, right? Harvey's not convinced that this is their guy, right? And so they end up getting the test results back from the incendiary device, and it turns out the results are inconclusive. There's not enough evidence on them, on the cigarette butt to confirm that Dave is the one that tried to set that fire, but it just didn't light. So Harvey was like, he's gonna get ready to get up and walk out because he done been here all day. He done heard them talking cash money about one of his besties, and it's just not enough, okay? You had me seriously doubting my friend. You had me looking at him with the side eye for a second. And y'all been talking all day and still ain't presenting nothing. It's not beyond a shadow of a doubt that he did this. And so Michelle is trying to convince him, look, just because this is inconclusive evidence doesn't mean that he didn't do it. So as he's telling them to F off, he is literally finna get ready to walk out the door. Now, they've been playing his book in the background for the past couple of hours, right? And so just as he's getting ready to walk out, he overhears this story about this grandma and her grandson going to go get some ice cream in the store that he set ablaze, right? Well, little did they know that when they walked in there, they weren't going to walk back out. But Dave slipped up because he mentioned that the little boy did not know how to pronounce pistachio right. He said, like, I can't even remember what the little boy said, but he mispronounced pistachio. And so when Harvey heard that, he was like, oh no, Dave is our guy. Because when Harvey talked to the grandfather in a one-on-one interview, this wasn't like a taped interview, this wasn't a recorded interview, this wasn't put in any type of statement. That is the only time that the grandfather told him that the little boy mispronounced pistachio. So how would Dave know that unless he was there? So he was like, all right, now he's game. So while they were getting all this information together, Caroline had got a phone call from her brother. Well, when she got home that night, Benji was waiting at her door to give her the news that their mom is being released from prison. And so she immediately starts to feel all the emotions. This wave of emotions just ran over her. And so she's trying to get through the door, and he's trying to convince her, just because she made this one bad mistake, she's not a terrible mom. She's our mom, and we have to basically forgive her. And Caroline is not there. Well, I call her Caroline. Michelle. Michelle is not there. She's not going to ever be there because she was there in that room when her mama tried to kill her. Leave her there to burn. And Benji was not, and he just does not understand how that affects her. And he probably never will. And so he's super stoked. So he's, kind of caught in between the two. So then she lets out this guttural, it was, ooh, y'all, that was a deep pain. And she went in the house and she slammed the door. That scream came from her gut, from the depths of her soul. So I don't know what's going to happen with her. She's going to fall apart, y'all. So then we go over to Harvey. Harvey goes home and he's just looking at the pictures of him and Dave. He's remembering all the good times that they had. And just as he's looking at this one picture in front of them, with them in front of an actual fire, they might have been grilling or something like that, or in front of a campfire, he ends up breaking, literally, because he was gripping his glass that he had his drink in. He gripped the glass so hard that he broke the glass. And so, of course, he cut his hand. Well, just as that's happening, his doorbell is ringing. I think that's his daughter coming over. As a matter of fact, it is his daughter. So his daughter comes over to join him for dinner or something like that. And he's telling her how awful he feels because Dave done played in his face all of these years. Done played me for a fool, had me believing that he was this good guy. And all along, under my nose, majority of those fires were set under Harvey's watch. And so, of course, she's trying to tell him, it's not your fault. You never could have known, da-da-da. And he can't seem to forgive himself, especially knowing that particular case that's covered in his book that he goes over about the grandma and the grandson. And so he was like, when that fire happened, the mom insisted on seeing her son. And I think the little boy was like 3 years old, which is, oh my gosh. So the mom insisted on seeing her son, and she just cried. She cried and cried and screamed. And the only thing that got her to stop was Dave. Dave had came over to give her a hug. And so he was convinced that from that point on that Dave was a good guy. And now look at him. So he just feels awful about it. Now we're going to go over to, let's go to Dave. So they had received a phone call from Dave after he got discharged, right? And he was telling them that he was just going to go home and rest up, and he was going to see them tomorrow. Well, instead of him going home, he actually went to go try to figure out what was going on with the milk jug killer, because I mean, if he finna go down in a second, at least he can take some of the heat off of him or get some type of reprieve if he catches another arsonist, right? So he probably don't even think that they own to him. He thinking he outsmarting them. So he ends up going to the fire. Like I said, he gets that information about Coops. And so then he ends up going to the grocery store, where you remember they had put those chicken tags in the bags. So he ended up having the guy run back the surveillance footage on there. And lo and behold, he ends up seeing this black guy in a hoodie. Right? And so he zooms in, but he can't really see his face, like for real. But we know that it's Freddy. And so he was like, So then he ends up going to Coops, like the corporate part of it, after he had received the information about the HR guy from Coops being in the fire. He goes to Coops and he talks to one of the assistant managers, who ends up telling him about Freddy's interview and how it was a total bust. And so she ends up making fun of Freddy, like, oh, you wanted him to be the face of the company? And he was like, is this why they keep you around? To degrade people like this? You know, basically. And so she felt real small after that. And so then he ends up, where did he go? I want to say he actually broke into Freddy's home. I think he broke into Freddy's home after that. He didn't have any type of warrant, no nothing, right? So when he broke in, Freddy wasn't there, because Freddy is somewhere else. We'll get to that in a minute. So he broke into Freddy's home. He was able to see that there was nothing. Oh, sorry. Before we go there, I'm sorry. He had actually went to talk to DCS. So it turns out Freddy was in the foster care system majority of his life. He had went to 20 plus foster care homes from, I want to say, maybe the age of 2, or maybe since he was born until he aged out, which was like 19. And so the social worker can't really give him too much information, but she was like, maybe he made it out good. And I was like, how do you think he made it out good if he had to go to 20 plus different homes? There had to be a whole bunch of, just pain, just continuous pain. So she ended up telling him that the last house that he went to, once he aged out, the foster mom basically put him out because she couldn't receive any more checks for taking care of him, right? She couldn't afford to take care of him. And so she was like, oh, it's good that he made it out, because 6 months after she put him out, her house caught on fire. And everybody in the house died. It was 2 adults, 2 teenagers, and I want to say 2 kids under the age of 6 or something like that. So it was like 6 people that died in that fire. So she was like, oh, he got lucky. And I was like, what the hell? So then as she said that, I was like, oh, goodness gracious, this is bad. So he ended up sneaking into Freddy's house at this point. Like I said, no warrant. He goes through his laptop. He ends up going to the closet. He finds the milk jugs filled with grease. He finds the milk jugs there. He goes in, looks at his laptop, and he finds like all this different random stuff, but there are no emails sent, right? So I was like, why did he go through the sent emails? But maybe that's because of the try to get confirmation about the interview, right? So he doesn't see anything there. So we're going to put a pause right there. So Freddy ends up meeting up with Lee at this closed amusement park, right? And so before Lee gets there, Freddy starts tossing all of this important information that he's held on to, right? The Coops employee handbook, another book from Coops. He also tosses this picture, and I don't know if this is a picture of a kid that he might have had or a picture of him when he was a baby, right? But he tosses that. He tosses a birth certificate. He tosses like his ID and everything and torches it, right? And so Lee ends up coming and they're walking through the amusement park. He's giving him all of this information about these different rides that were built at these different times and little fun facts around the time, like when some of this stuff was built, like Neil Armstrong was stepping on the moon at the same time that one of the rides was built, this, that, and the third, right? So all these little fun facts. So then, what did he say? I think he said he had talked about never going back to Coops because they don't care about him. And he was like, see, man, that's what I've been trying to tell you, this, that, and the third. And so then they get on the topic of the manager, Dex. And so he was like, that's crazy how Dex is a year younger than me. And, Dex had also talked to Dave. Dave had also got some information from Dex. And Dex was basically telling him, how much of an odd bird Freddy is. He's not volatile. He's not dangerous or anything. He's just odd. He's very quiet, right? It's the quiet ones you got to look out for. So back to Lee. Lee was talking about how Dex is a year younger than him, and he's made it so higher up in the ranks at Coops and this, that, and the third. And he was like, well, if you don't like him, then just kill him. That was Freddy's solution to Dex. To solving the issue about Dex. And so Lee was like, what are you talking about? He was like, yeah, just kill him. And he was like, oh, and then he starts shouting out this address. He says the address to Dex's house, which means he done looked it up and he knows that Dex lives with his mom and his sister. And so now Lee's spidey senses is tingling. I was like, damn, where was they at like 2 hours ago before you showed up? So then Freddy starts talking about mice. And how when you come in the mornings, sometimes how mice are on like the sticky pads and stuff at work. And he was like, so what do you do with them? And so by this point, Lee is getting real nervous. And he was like, oh, I wouldn't worry about them. And he was like, but what if they're alive? And he was like, well, I'll just turn it over. I'll flip the mouse pad over and then I'll just squish it. And so then Freddy starts yelling, right? And it it startled him. And he was like, why would you do that? And so he was like, to put it out of his misery. So by this time, Freddy done got close to Lee. And he was like, give me your phone. And why didn't Lee run? Y'all, Lee should have took off running. He probably would have lost Freddy or whatever, but he gave him his phone. Freddy chucked his phone. And so then he was like, give me your keys. And he was like, you don't have to do this, Freddy, da-da-da. He ends up giving him his keys, y'all. He should have took the keys and wrecked his face with the key. He gave it to him. So when he gave him the key, Freddy ends up telling him a way to get out of the amusement park. He was like, go down by the log ride, walk a couple of paces, and then it's a cut right there in the fence. 2 miles down the road, it's a bus route. You need to get on the bus and get the hell out of here. And so, y'all, Lee turns around and he starts walking with his back to Freddy. Why was Freddy following him at first, y'all? Like, every time he would stop, Freddy would stop. So when he would turn around a couple of times, y'all, Freddy was right behind that man. And I was really thinking that he was going to take Lee out, but he didn't. He let Lee get away. And so Lee took off running through the woods, right? So then Freddy ends up going to, what is her name, y'all? The hairdresser lady that shows up every day to Coops. I cannot remember her name that she would give them at the store. However, we don't see her first. She actually comes into her house. She steps on her carpet and is making this super squishy noise, right? And so I was like, As soon as she heard that, y'all, because she had a 2 bag fulls of groceries. As soon as she heard that squishy noise, and she knew that something wasn't right, she should have put them grocery bags back down there. Hell, groceries is hella expensive. She should have took her ass back up out the house. I would have turned right back around, because what? So instead, y'all, she actually put the grocery bags down on the counter, and out walks Freddy. So it turns out Freddy knows Miss Hairdresser Lady, because Miss Hairdresser Lady must have changed her identity or something, because that was Freddy's last foster mom, the one that put him out, the one whose house he burned down with them 6 kids in there. Now remember, when she was doing his hair, she had told him that she had a son. He killed her son, y'all. Ain't that crazy? Did she not ever recognize him? Was he that insignificant? And the crazy part is, she had him for almost 3 years, because she took him in at 16. So he ends up telling her, I had went to the movies once. And I went to the movies, but I don't know what type of movie he went to go see, but apparently everybody else was laughing and he didn't get the jokes. He was like, people was laughing. I don't understand why they was laughing. And so he was like, she said, people are weird like that, Freddy. Sometimes people are hard to understand. And so he was like, I did that once, and he said the amusement park was the only place where he was happy. That's the one time he was happy. And he only went there once. He didn't go a lot of times. And so he done came back for her, because she kicked him out. The day that she kicked him out, he felt abandoned. He felt lost. And he's been feeling that way ever since. For the last 25 years, he's felt the same way that he felt the day she kicked him out. And so as he's spilling this jug of grease, all over her floor, she's starting to put 2 and 2 together, and she was like, Freddy, I do not want to die. And I was like, girl, you had every opportunity. When he turned his back while he was pouring this grease on your floor, you should have ran out the back door. You should have did something besides stand there and just look like you finna cry. You got knives, you got pans, you got pots. Freddy looked like he about 75 pounds wet. He might have skinny man strength though. So she just stood there, and she was like, Freddy, I do not want to die today. And he was like, well, how else are we finna reach heaven? So just as he's saying that, y'all, he been playing with this lighter the whole time. Dave comes in. Now, I forgot to tell y'all that the last thing that Dave had done when he was at Freddy's house, he found this business card where Miss Yolanda worked at, and he knew where to go based off of that. And so Dave comes in, and he's got this gun. She smelled the grease. She smelled it when she came in. She heard the squishy. He comes in. He sees the milk jug has already been poured out. He sees Freddy with the lighter. Instead of him firing off his gun and, creating that explosive environment to, cause the fire to spark a fire, he empties the clip, which was really smart, and he tosses the gun in Freddy's direction. Well, of course, Freddy ducks, because it's a big gun coming his way. And Dave actually does something smart, and he grabs the fire extinguisher, which, who has a fire extinguisher at their house? Okay? I don't. Anyway, if you do, kudos to you, because you're really smart. More people should have fire extinguishers at their house. So he ends up grabbing the fire extinguisher while Freddy is ducking to avoid getting hit by the gun. And by the time Freddy come back up and he trying to start this flame on his lighter, y'all, he done got hosed down with the fire extinguisher. Okay, so now he just sitting there in ash and all the chemicals from the fire extinguisher. And y'all, Dave, he done caught a hard on because this gets him off. He done caught a hard on. And he ends up looking over there at Yolanda and was like, ma'am, you're safe now. I was like, what? Y'all, and that's the way the episode ends. I did not expect it to happen like that. I expected there to be a second scene, a second alternate scene that actually happened like the reality of what happened. But no, Dave came in and saved the day. Or at least that's how they want us to think it happened for now. All right. The next episode drops this Friday. Y'all, I am so excited. It was a really good episode. Y'all let me know what y'all thought about it, okay? You guys can reach me at Me and You TV Reviews on Facebook and on Instagram. You can also reach me at My TV Reviews Podcast without the S on the end at gmail.com. Y'all, I want to give a shout out before I get off of here, because I do see that y'all been listening to your girl. I appreciate y'all. When I tell y'all, thank you so much, because y'all have been doing the ratings and the reviews. I appreciate that. I really do. It helps put me on the map a little bit more so more people can listen. But I want to give a shout out to Marmot Lover. And I was like, what is a marmot? Y'all, I looked it up and it's like one of them little gopher things. It's real cute. It looked like a little gopher in the yard. So shout out to Marmot Lover, who gave a review on Apple. Okay, so I can still see them when you put them in, so y'all do that. Okay, and Marmot Lover said Mo just has a really pleasing way about her. I only watch a couple of shows that she covers, but this pod is a nice distraction from the day-to-day. And when I tell y'all, we need a whole bunch of distractions right now. We need a whole bunch. So however I can help, I'm going to be here. All right. So that's it. I really do appreciate it. If you have Spotify, go ahead and start your girl up. If you got Apple, leave a review like Marmot Lover. Okay. I love y'all. I hope y'all have an awesome rest of your week. Y'all be safe out there. And until we meet over the airwaves again, I am Mo, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.